way, is kind of like a magical illusion. You know, you're sort of playing a trick in a way with the mind. You know, where you're getting them to believe something is happening when it really isn't. You know, so
it's a similar discipline.
An appropriately named panel.
So speaking of puppetry, I'm intrigued to know how you first got involved, particularly with the Henson Company. And
let's see. I had puppets as a kid, and I'd watch all the usual puppet shows they'd run on TV, of course, in the 60s and 70s. But when Muppet Show came along in 1976, I got really interested. I thought, what is going on here? This is like a whole new paradigm of puppetry. So I really wanted to know how these things worked and were built, and there wasn't much information out about that at that time. But I would save up my pocket money and buy fur fabrics and foam and try and make these little hand puppets and figure out how they were worked as well. And so I did some self-teaching. What else? So I sort of got that far, and then I decided in the last 2 years of school, instead of doing woodwork and metalwork and all the things that you were supposed to do back then in the late 70s, I wanted to make puppets. So I became the first. Back then, you know, women took sewing. There was an actual thing called sewing, I guess, and cookery, and the guys would do woodwork and metalwork. So I was the first boy in my school to actually do sewing classes, so I could make puppets. And it worked out very well. And then some of those puppets I would take along to, I figured out how to get into the taping of the Muppet Show, which was done at Elstree, now where they make EastEnders. It's now the BBC. So I would bribe my way into the studios when they were taping in 1980, and bring my puppets in that I'd made, and Jim Henson would put them on. And so I was 15 at that time. And then when I left school, they just finished the Muppet Show and went across the road to the film studios to do the Great Muppet Caper. And it was a 2-picture deal with Lou Grade. Jim wanted to make The Dark Crystal. Lou Grade wanted to make Muppet Movie 2. So they shook hands on it and made a 2-picture deal back to back. So I left school, and they were on location for the Great Muppet Caper in a village where I don't know if you know the film, but the Muppets were landing in a duck pond after being thrown out of an aeroplane. So they were taping that, and I tracked them down, and I actually had an envelope to give to Jim saying I'd like to have a job, please, as a puppeteer or a puppet builder. And it was Jim's 44th birthday that day. And at the end of filming, he thought, I think, that it was a birthday card. So when I gave him my job application, he was like, "Oh, thank you very much." So and then 2 weeks later, I got a call from the producer, and they tried me out as a background puppeteer. I think they just kind of felt sorry for me and thought, well, he's here anyway, let's just give him a job. So that's
sheer force of will and tenacity.
Yeah, very much so. Though. Yeah, you know, I was definitely determined, and I found out years later that Jim was concerned that he was keeping me out of my college education or something. So I was 16, you know, but it's like, no, this is where else could you learn to do this stuff?
Yeah,
you know. So it was the best education ever, and those first few years, the Great Muppet Caper, Dark Crystal, and Return of the Jedi. All that information I learned, I'm still using to this day, you know, so it's really set me up. So I have Jim to thank for everything. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, yeah.
Bye.
You just mentioned education, and I'm aware that you started your own training program.
Yeah. I have an online puppetry academy now where you can go on and watch videos that I'm putting up. It's sort of an organic, evergreen kind of thing, but it comes from stuff that Jim and Frank taught me, especially during the Dark Crystal workshops that we were doing. And so some of the things that they taught us there I put into the academy, and also things that I've just learned along the way over the years. but it's something that I wish that I'd had when I was starting out. Nothing existed back then on how to do Muppets style puppetry for film and television. Close-up hand puppetry. So this year I put that up online. We need new blood. We need new puppeteers. Secrets of Puppetry is called. Secrets of Puppetry.
There we go. There's the plug.
For those of you that are curious. Yeah.
Excellent.
Hello. Hey. Now we can start.
You mentioned we need more puppeteers, and there's been it seemed to be a bit of a move away from puppetry with CGI
It did
technology
seem
coming
that
in.
way, and
Is that coming back now?
There was that fear more than the reality. People were still having careers in puppetry, although there were a few years where I didn't even put a puppet on because I was animating as well, and I worked in games for a few years as well, just because I wanted to conquer that. And animation's another way of bringing a character to life.
Yeah.
Something that doesn't move, breathing life into it. So it's a good skill to have. But it never fully went away, and I just always knew that the pendulum would swing back to practical creatures and puppets again. Puppets have been around for thousands of years. They're not really going to go away anywhere anytime soon. And if they are, it's my fault. It's people like me to blame for not doing good stuff and putting it out there. So, but it's definitely come back in a big way now in films and TV and commercials and live stuff as well, across the stage. Theatrical productions, like Avenue Q and that kind of thing. So it's back, but it never really
went away.
Not completely. Yeah.
So, can we talk about Star Wars?
Star Wars, I've heard of that.
So obviously you were involved in Return of the Jedi as more of a puppeteer than a full-body character.
Yeah, a creature puppeteer. Yeah, that's right.
But now you're back in episode 7, 8, and
9,
more. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, 9. He got on the Falcon at the end of episode 8 with Finn there. He survived. So we know that he's going to be in episode 9. So.
But the process has changed since when you first puppeteered the character.
Yeah. Originally in the Millennium Falcon with Lando, he was actually a hand puppet because the technology didn't exist for moving mouths and acting on a face, on a mask then. It really wasn't that advanced. So I suggested we turn the mask into a hand puppet, like a big Muppet, and then they put in cable blink controls, like bicycle brake cable blinks, and ear wiggles too. I asked them to add that. When he goes into hyperspace and you look at the back of his head, you can see his ears going, "Wait, we're in hyperspace, yay!" So you watch out for that. The new one doesn't have wiggly ears though. We need to fix that.
Some bits of string.
Right. Then he was a hand puppet, so he couldn't move around, he couldn't walk around or anything unless he had just the suit with the blank head that didn't have any movement on it. So now in the Force Awakens and the new films, of course, it's an animatronic face. So I have a puppeteer that works that from outside, and we have talkback, so I can hear what they're saying. I can hear the actors, and I can talk to them if I need. And we rehearse without the head on, so I can get orientated and they can see what my intent is. We usually talk through the scene with blocking on what my beats are and what I'm thinking and where I'm looking. And then we put the heads on and we shoot. So, but now I can walk around a lot and interact with the cast, and it's great. And I can fall over. I usually fall over on each film, so because I can't really see that well. The eyes fog up after a while.
Yeah.
So, but it's a very different process. But I'm still trying to keep bring back that same sort of innocence that Nine Num had in Return of the Jedi that I had at the time, because I was like 17 then. So, I can do anything I want. I can blow up a Death Star, and hey. So I still want some of that. He's been a lot more serious lately in the new films because there's been a lot at stake.
Yeah.
And he's older. He's wrinklier and more textured, like me. But yeah, no, I think as I get older, I look more and more like him, like owners with their dogs. I think that's happening, and I just have to accept it. At least I didn't play Jabba the Hutt, otherwise I'd be in trouble. So, yeah.
We'll start taking questions from the audience. Does anyone have a question for Mike straight away? Okay, we'll go for Thanos.
Out of the creatures you've puppeteered and animated, which one has been your favourite to actually do?
It's hard because they're all so different. I mean, it is hard to pick a favourite, and that's when I do it. Then I change my mind. 6 months later. There was a character I used to perform on Sky TV back in the late 80s, early 90s on the children's channel, and he was a sort of this crazy nutcase that was pretty well unscripted, and I could make him do anything I wanted. Basically, he was sort of the weird side of me that I'm not allowed to be as a human. So I'm probably going to rebuild him and bring him back in some form or other soon, hopefully within a year or two. So I've always liked him, but I enjoyed, I was a big fan of Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, so assisting Frank on that in Jedi was special for me, Return of the Jedi. So that's always been nice. But also being a sort of the original big Muppet fan in a way, whenever I get to work any of those guys or assist with Kermit, it's always kind of special to me because he's just so evergreen. But yeah, I'm the only person I think, living or dead, to have actually assisted all three Kermit puppeteers: Jim Henson, Steve Whitmire, and Matt Vogel. So that's kind of weird. But it is always like an honour, to be a part of these classic characters. So it's really hard though to pick a favourite. Animation, I mean, animating Woody was in Toy Story 2 was great, of course. They were very particular about these characters, so we had a lot of training for those. So it's a hard one, though, And I think that I always say my greatest thing I haven't done yet. So I think my most favourite of all time, I haven't done it yet. You know what I mean? Because there's so much still yet to be done. So ask me maybe in a year or two, and maybe I'll have a new answer. It's like picking children, though. You can't pick your favourite, can you? Although some people do. No comment. So.
When you say assisting Kermit, can you just explain to us exactly?
So essentially, like the main performer would do the voice and the head and usually a one arm rod, and then an assistant would come in and do the other hand, or sometimes both hands, or sometimes the legs, or the hand and the legs, or playing the banjo. Often he'll do. He's got a thing where he likes to play the banjo a lot. So we made a special rig where we got his fingers to actually pluck the banjo, which we hadn't. I think we started those on the Lipton tea commercials a few years ago. I think they were shown over here.
Yeah.
I think. That was Subway, wasn't it? That's right. It was Subway commercials. Yeah. So we did that. So often we'll have special rigs for him as well, or we've had him driving real cars in Burbank in the last TV series.
Show, yeah.
This is insane. And what else have we done? So like instead of just waving his arm around, with Kermit I like to do tricks to where if I bend the rod in such a way, you can get his hand to sort of gesture like this, but then also do that as well. And then if I bring it out of shot, I can bend the fingers and kind of make him point, and just stuff that you don't think about. We did things where he'd have to sometimes take his headphones off, and that was always tricky. And so
does he use a phone in the show as well?
And we had a pen that he would click when he was nervous. So we had a special rig for that. And his thumb would get. And then he had a bonsai tree he was trimming on one episode. So we had all these little rigs for him and stuff, and also trying to do, like there was I don't know if any of you saw the last series that we did a couple of years ago. It lasted like 16 episodes, but it was sort of like the Muppets meets The Office. It got cancelled, the ratings went down, but we tried to do things in there that he'd never done before. So, like when Miss Piggy was challenging him over his new girlfriend, he'd be all uncomfortable. So we'd sort of try and see him in ways we hadn't seen before. So we'd like make him really uncomfortable, and he's like doesn't know where to put his arms and stuff, and just things that you wouldn't normally see him do. So every episode we tried to come up with things for that.
Which brings a bit more realism to the character as well.
It's challenging for us. What can we do that's impossible? Let's try and do it. So. Yeah.
And that must be a Jim Henson thing as well.
Well, yeah,
It's
actually, he always
achieved it.
encouraged experimentation and play and fun. And Jim would always say that, you know, if you play, that's where the good stuff comes from. You know, that's sort of a Muppet thing. So if you're having a good time, then, you know, you find things at work that you wouldn't otherwise find, and that fun comes through in the work. So, you know, we're still professional, but we also can be quite loose on set sometimes. But it's great. It's a great job.
Any other questions from the audience? The gentleman with the beard.
What's the puppeteer reaction to CGI? Because Star Wars has kind of got a combination of both.
Yeah, well, like Jim was always very much into the technology side, and he wanted to puppeteer virtual characters anyway. He was talking about that right from 1980, before it was even possible. So he always enjoyed that side of it. And in the 80s, there was a company called Media Lab that used puppeteers just for CG characters, and then that kind of went away a while. Now it's all mocap and everything. But some people do both, and you know, and have transitioned into the digital side of things, and others are much more old school. But now we're seeing a maturing where everything's settling down a little bit, where we're using CGI for the best of what it can be, and the real stuff for the best of what it can be and how it should be. And so better decisions are being made now, and you know, they can play together as well. It's still a process that's happening, but some fear it and some welcome it, you know. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. We're not done with it yet. It's always evolving and changing. So, but I mean, I like it. I like the fact that it can do different things, but sometimes, you know, you can't beat a practical puppet or creature. You just, you know, and that's certainly in the current Star Wars films. Everything right now is practical, so which is good. Yeah, even though it's more limited. You know, like if you take Jabba the Hutt in Return of the Jedi, he really couldn't do anything. I mean, he could wobble about a bit, and he could slightly turn his head and open his mouth, and his eyes blink, but he couldn't do a whole lot. Whereas with CG, he'd have been all over the place doing loads of things. But it was still better because he was just real. He was there, you know, creaking away, and it was just real. Same with Little Shop of Horrors, where I worked on the plants on the lip sync for that film, for the Frank Oz musical. And, you know, the largest one was the size of a car, you know, and probably weighed about as much. And it was physically hard work, pulling that rubber around to the songs and the dialogue. And we were, you know, at the time, it was 1986, we were filming at Pinewood. And I remember at the time pulling these levers around, like, ow, 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 when are they going to invent CG? This would be so much easier. You know, bring it on. Why are they torturing puppeteers? But, you know, you look at it now, and it's like, yeah, they would have done it as CG now, but it wouldn't have been as good. Things like when that mouth closes on the plant in front of Seymour, you know, you can see the rush of air pushing his hair around and stuff, and it was just real. I mean, yeah, there's nothing like it. So yeah.
One other question on the front row here.
What's your favourite thing you've actually worked on out of Labyrinth and all the puppeteer things you've actually done?
Favourite thing. I could probably be a bit more general. I mean, when we do like Muppets and when we work with musicians and do songs and stuff, that's always fun. Muppets and music always seem to go well together. So whenever we work with any musicians like Dave Grohl or
You had Willie Nelson on the
we
show.
had Willie, yeah, Willie was great. Yeah, and, you know, those sorts of things are really nice. And some of the older classics too.
Did you work on Treasure Island with all the Muppets then?
Yeah, I worked on that as well.
What was it like on the set for that? Was it quite complicated on the movements for the puppets and things?
Yeah, well, especially on the ship, you know, because it was on a rocking gimbal, so you really could get seasick on that thing. So. Yeah. So yeah, favourite stuff. I mean, it's hard to say, but when you get to work with you know your own heroes that you've always admired, you know, then I could probably reel off a whole long list if I sat down for 5 minutes. But yeah.
What made you become a puppeteer then?
I think I remember I was very, very, very small, and I noticed my teddy bear wasn't very good at moving around, so I think I started moving him and puppeteering my teddy bear. So maybe I don't know. It's it's a sickness, a disease. So.
So you did recently some live Muppet shows at the O2. You were involved with that, weren't you?
Yeah.
What are the differences between the live show and the filming, and what are some of the
Yeah,
challenges that you had to overcome there?
Well, the fact that you only get one go at it, you can't do 5, 6 takes. You have longer runs, it seems. You know, normally you wouldn't do more than about 30 seconds to 2 minutes in a scene on film or television, and they were doing sketches that last for 10 minutes sometimes, the musical numbers.
Yeah.
And also, you know, it was a 2-hour show, so it's really, it's like doing a rock concert, but yeah, I mean, it is different. But we're still working to cameras and monitors even then, you know.
Yeah.
They were still framing up on the puppets, even though the audience, we were in full view, but we kind of had to ignore that. And we still play to the cameras just the same, and the audience could see that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just I mean, yeah, the difference is everything has to come together at the same time on a live show. We didn't really ever get it completely right in rehearsals, but in true Muppet form, we pulled it together at the last minute. So there'll be more of those. We did the Hollywood Bowl a year ago as well, so it was a variation on that show. Scary, very scary.
Mm.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience? Right at the back over there.
Who was your favourite director to work with?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, favorite director? Yeah. Jim was good because he would just let you play and have fun, and you could kind of do anything you wanted. But I was really impressed with Bob Zemeckis, who was known, of course, for the Back to the Future films. But I worked with him on Who Framed Roger Rabbit in 1987, I think it was, when we filmed that, or 88. And what was interesting about him was he was sort of everybody's director. He had he was a writer for a start. He was a good story guy, script writer. But he also understood the actors. You know, he could really direct all the actors well, and give them proper acting notes. But he was also a good camera guy. He knew how to use the camera, much like Hitchcock. Alfred Hitchcock knew how to use a camera. Zemeckis was that same way. That's still the same way. And also, he was good with the technical side of things. He had a lot of patience because Roger Rabbit was essentially a big special effects film. And I was amazed at how he worked so well with all the effects guys and all the invisible stuff we were doing and animation things. So he was just like everybody's director, and he had so much patience. I was really impressed by that, you know. Whereas Jim and Frank, they were puppet guys, you know. But Zemeckis was like, to me, he was like, oh, this is a real filmmaker, you know. So maybe him, I don't know. It's a tough one, but I was really impressed watching him work and watching him keep his cool amidst all that chaos. Yeah, good.
So you've worked on Star Wars with multiple directors. Do you have a favourite Star Wars director that you've worked with?
Let's see. I didn't do so much in The Last Jedi, so I worked a little bit with Ryan, but he was very sweet and very nice and approachable. Everyone really liked Ryan Johnson to work with. But I didn't know him as well, perhaps, or have as many, you know. Now we're with J.J. Abrams. I suppose just because I know J.J. more, I would say J.J. Abrams. You know, again, he's very approachable, and he sings 80 songs when he's on set, and it's brilliant. So he has a good laugh. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, George Lucas was just very quiet. You never really got any direction from him.
Mm-hmm.
So and yeah, Richard Marquand was kind of serious, and the first AD was the one who did all the communicating to us directly for him. So I didn't get so much of a sense of Richard as such. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Next question.
Dealing with all those different actors over the years, were some a bit more cantankerous about having to work with make-believe?
Yeah, let's see. For the most part, we've been really lucky, and they come off set saying "best job ever" and all that stuff. But were there any that I'm trying to think that perhaps I heard stories that I didn't see it myself, but I heard stories that Danny Kaye, when he was on the Muppet Show, was incredibly impatient, and Miss Piggy's eye fell off or something, and he had a fit. I remember Harrison Ford having a moment on Return of the Jedi. He'd come out of carbonite and they're squirting stuff in his eyes to make them all water and sting and everything. And he went up to Jabba and he had that scene with Jabba. And someone was talking in the back of the set and he just lost it. It's like, he just yelled at everybody, and you can all be ready and done with your Star Wars in our trailer, and off he goes. But I mean, that was understandable, I guess. I think for the most part, there probably is someone I'm forgetting. I have to put it in my book.
Yeah, Miss Piggy.
Well, yeah, we don't go there.
Okay,
Yeah.
Question over here.
Well, I just thought if we'd like to hear it in one of my impressions.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very good at doing the Star Wars impressions.
Okay.
Now this is Jedi Master Yoda. Good film, Devon. Good Skywalker. You will be a good Padawan, I tell you what. In a few years, you will do very well for the Jedi. Good food. Good food. Once more the Sith will rule the galaxy, and we shall have peace.
Excellent. Hey, thank you. Hey, good.
Were you always acutely aware of the strings? I mean, did you have to hide them? I mean, it's like in Jerry Anderson type puppetry, you can see the strings.
Yeah.
You always have to get through frame by frame to make sure the strings.
Yeah, we never really. Funny thing about Muppets and Jim and Frank is they were afraid of marionettes, and they didn't like them. They didn't know how to work them, and whenever they tried to do stuff, they're like, I can't do this, someone else do it. It was so funny. So we didn't really have a lot of that stuff, with our film and TV puppetry. Really, it was kind of rare. But we had a lot of arm rods and things like that. And for TV it was okay, the regular old school TV, the low-res stuff. But when they went to film, they would try harder to hide the arm rods for the Muppet movie and that kind of thing, the early films. And they would try and camouflage them with thinner rods and mottling sort of grey and black paint on them to break up the line a little bit more. But now, they just put a digital tracker on the rods, and they just do a pass on it, and they become invisible. It's crazy.
I remember some fans were outraged when you started doing that because they wanted to see the rods
wanted to
still.
see the rods. Yeah. So yeah. But yeah, very few visible strings really on that stuff.
And even when they are visible, it's easy to forget that they're there because of the nature of the
Yeah, I mean, there were a
performances
few
and-
things like in the Dark Crystal, there were a couple of marionettes they used. Labyrinth, there was a fire gang that was a marionette jumping out from a tree, and Sedidimus on Ambrosius was a marionette and a real dog, but they were far away enough that you couldn't really see the strings. And Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, there are some marionette shots in that as well, where he's, I think, on the ice and falling over or something. But yeah, so string puppets weren't a big thing for Muppets.
Okay, we've probably got time for one or two more questions. Do we have any
Alright.
from further at the back? Or okay, there's one over here.
I believe you worked in Fraggle Rock.
Yeah.
Somewhat. Can you tell us all?
Yeah, Fraggle Rock. So yeah, the question is Fraggle Rock. What did I do? So the bulk of it was quite a clever idea, and it sort of was congruent with the way Jim approached life anyway. Was that the core of the show was taped in Toronto. It was a Canadian show, and they had a human called Doc with his dog Sprocket, and Uncle Traveling Matt went out into the real world and wrote postcards and sent them back. So so the idea that Jim had was to have co-productions in different countries. So we would have we'd reshoot the human bits in both in UK and France and in Germany. And those stories, they could have like Germany copied exactly the Canadian scripts and the sets and everything, but with a German actor and all filmed in German. And in France, they completely rewrote and changed everything. And he was a retired chef, and Sprocket was called Croquette. And then, so he would have to bark in French, of course. And then in the UK, of course, it was a lighthouse keeper. The first 2 seasons, I think it was Fulton Mackay. He was lovely. And then the second season was John Gordon Sinclair. I think we did 1 season with him. And then we finished up with Simon O'Brien for the last ones. So some shows we would do 3 times. So we had several Sprockets and Gobos and Uncle Mats, and we'd have to match the continuity on Gobo's costume and the postcard that he would go pick up and take back through, so they could cut directly from us going through the Fraggle Hole and then entering Canada with the same speed and cadence with the Gobo and all that stuff. And Jerry Nelson would have to replace my voice as well in post-production. And we would also do a lot of Uncle Travelling Mats too in the UK, and I did a lot in France as well. And so for the British ones, at least, Dave Goals would have to revoice my Uncle Mats as well. And I also did Sprocket in quite a lot of French episodes, and I think 12 German episodes as well. So yeah, that's kind of how it worked. But the idea was to make it affordable for other productions in other countries, and the ones that we were at one point going to do Saudi Arabia and Japan, and those never quite worked out. But other countries that couldn't quite have the budgets, and they would just dub the shows basically with their own actors. But it was an interesting idea, and everyone thought that the show was made in that country, which was quite clever. I'm not really aware of anyone that's done that since. So yeah, good. It was fun though.
Do we have one final question from the audience? And we've got a really good one.
Somebody's hiding. Who's shy?
Go on then.
Oh, we got
Okay.
2. Let's do them quick. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Now, you probably can't say too much about this, but have you been reunited with Billy D. Williams for episode 9?
Billy D. Williams.
Lando.
He's a Star Wars character.
Oh, I can't remember. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think we've got someone from Disney just outside the room.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that would be a good thing if it could happen.
Okay, what
And then we
about...
had one more at the
yeah,
front
sorry.
there, yes.
Are there any other film franchises that you've not been involved in that use puppets that you'd kind of like to have done, like things like Jurassic Park, things like that?
Well, I animated on Jurassic Park, so I did that part. But actually, Doctor Who, I want to do Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess if I could pick one, that would be it. I've got a lot of friends that worked on it, of course. So I need to get myself on that, don't I?
Yes. No.
Just a final question following on from the dodgy episode 9 question that we can't answer.
Oh yeah.
One that you might be able to answer is,
Okay.
what were your thoughts about Billy D. Williams returning to the role of
Oh
Lando
yeah, I wanted
Calrissian?
him to come back. It's like I was always assuming and hoping that he would return, at some point. So I'm glad that now, they've made that call. It's great, it's very satisfying. I mean, episode 9 is all about, wrapping everything up right from the first story and from episode 1 even, and sort of tying up the Skywalker story and all those characters that we loved, and I guess Lando is sort of the last surviving human from the original trilogy. Is that correct?
I think possibly
So-
one of them, yeah. One of the main ones at least.
Yeah. So it's important. Yeah, that's good.
On that note, thank you very much everyone for
Excellent.
coming. And thanks to Mike Quinn. Make sure you go and visit him at his table. You've got photographs and all sorts of
Thank
other
you.
stories to tell.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Good questions.